All right, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Yes. I just told her it feels a little bit like Putin with the huge table and the big distance between people. I know it's a small group, but if you can hear me fine, then it's fine. But I would like to say before I begin my presentation that I really did envision it as a discussion. So anything that I say that you have a question about, please feel free to interrupt and just say, hey, I was thinking about that too, or whatever it is. Also, it is so few of us in here. I know that we have an online audience as well, and I know that the online audience has the ability to ask questions, and those will get to me. But before I get started, anybody in here in the K-12 space? All right, you get all your questions answered. A little bit? Informally? 4-H, okay, yeah, okay. I'd call that the K-12 space. All right, well, the exciting thing for me is that we are now in the K-12 space as well with digital credentials. And I'm gonna start by just telling you a little bit about our journey at Georgia Virtual with digital credentials and how it led up to this point. So we began back in 2012. My boss went to a conference or a webinar and saw about Mozilla and open badges and said, hey, let's do that, right? And just to do it. And I was, okay, we were in the process of revamping our online teacher preparation course and training, completely revamping it. So we thought, okay, this is what we'll do. We'll have this course available. And our thoughts about the training for our online teachers, what we found is that we were going out and recruiting teachers to teach our students, looking for the best teachers possible, obviously. Take resumes, I would put out a position for an English teacher online, and I would get 400 resumes for one position, right? So, okay, wow, we were getting teachers of the year, really, really fantastic resumes. And then we would hire them, and then we would train them to teach online, and they would find that they didn't like it, that it was tedious. They would get into the semester and just say, this is not for me, because online teaching is not for everyone. And they would, they wouldn't quit, but maybe by the end of the semester. So we'd put all that training into them, and then we would lose all that investment. So what we decided to do was go ahead and create the content. We were already very experienced in creating course content that was OER and putting it out there for anybody to use. So we thought we'd do the same thing with our training course, and in addition, we would badge it. So we built a WordPress site that was capable of doing that. We worked with Credly to badge, and we did that from 2013 until 2017. Well, in fact, we're still doing it today, but for those years, that's all we did was to badge that course. And people get the badge and go, thank you very much for the sticker. This is interesting, but it didn't have an ecosystem to live within. 2017, I came to an IMS conference and saw a presentation about pathways, and boom, the light bulb went off. Like, that's what is necessary for this, because then we can say, okay, look, all these different things you can do with a pathway that really brings those badges to life, right? So we have been badging our teachers, as I said, since 2013. We've been putting them on pathways since 2017. And we use pathways in all different kinds of manners with our teachers. So we have an application for our Master Teacher Program. That is a pathway. So they have to complete that pathway in order to apply or to complete the application for Master Teacher. We have an annual professional development pathway that everybody has to complete. We've been working on pathways to really diversify our jobs, so that some teachers might go into more of kind of a data science type of orientation. Some teachers would go more into communication, and we want our teachers to be able to do this with choice, to do professional learning that's meaningful to them, and then really go into, that part of the career in online learning in which interests them most. So this image here is just from our catalog. We have a catalog of, I don't even know, 30 some courses that are available for our teachers, but also for teachers across the state. In fact, it's open, it's available for anybody. So we have some higher ed institutions use our content, and we've had some folks from out of state use the content as well. This is an example that I just pulled from a slide that is from our professional learning symposium that is happening this Saturday. And now you see we deploy at the top are all the badges that you have. So you go to the event, right? And all the different learning experiences within that event are badged. It's on a pathway, so that whole event gets, you can go to 2 or 3 of them, or you can earn the whole thing. And just as kind of a point of advice, when you start working with pathways, make sure that they work, because there are some people, right? If you give them a pathway that they can't complete, you have just driven them crazy. And I know that from experience, because I have created pathways that they couldn't complete and got lots of, not just emails, but phone calls to personal phones saying, hey, because it is a motivating factor. There's no question about it. It's not everybody, but for some folks, if you have a blank space for a badge, they're going to want to fill it, right? So in any case, you can see that's one of the ways that we're using this with our faculty. It's for events, for professional learning opportunities, for courses, for applications. We signify their tenure with our school with a 1-year, 5-year. Their experiences going through our induction program are all badged and processed through Pathways. So anyway, my point being is that we have a lot of experience doing this, relative success, I would say, as well. Now, if you ask our faculty, I don't know, maybe they're frustrated by it. I'm not sure. I think that they really appreciate the visual aspect of it. But in any case, the goal all along was to bring this to the K-12 space, to bring it to the students. A little bit different motivation than for the teachers, but nonetheless, there are issues with issuing it to the students. This past fall, we just started issuing badges in a biology course. So the Department of Education received a grant from the U.S. Department of Education, reimagining education, and particularly looking at personalized learning. And we are partners on this grant, both as a school that's investigating personalized learning, as well as a couple of other opportunities, including looking at our content and see how we couldn't apply digital credentials to it. So we had one of the exceptional members of my team, who is a biology teacher, went into our biology course and just dismembered it, chunked it, as we like to say, but really tore it apart and did a couple things with it. One is they offered student choice by looking at different options, so the student doesn't have to go through and do. It was already very assignment rich, so the students can choose the assignments that they were going to, or the assessments they were going to use to prove that they had covered the standards. In addition, we offered every module would be badged, and it would cover that choice. So you could either complete it by doing this thing or this thing, literally one or the other. It was that simple at this point. And then they would get a badge. And a couple things we did with those badges. Number one, we put it on a pathway just for course completion, right? So you can literally look and say, okay, this is where I am in the course. And you would also see that perhaps you have a couple of gaps from the previous modules. You could accomplish getting through the content, but not earning all the badges, right? So the use to that of the student is, this is where I'm at, these are the next things, I can visually see where I'm going next. And to the teacher, they can look at it and say, hey, okay, this student, if I go back and look at this, they didn't understand mitosis, right? They progressed through the content, but I can see they didn't earn the badge on mitosis. So when we get to the end of the course, or at some point, we can do a review, right? And it's targeted for that particular bit of content for that student. Any questions about that so far? The other, see, it's another nice image of it, isn't it? And they're nice badges as well. The other thing that we did is we created a pathway for the standards. So we mapped. Sorry, I don't even know what that was going to do, so I'm going to move past it. Another thing that we did was create a pathway for the standards that support the course. And in that case, the standards it's not course progression, because you might cover the standards for biology, the same standard at the beginning of the course in this unit. You might cover it in the third unit, wherever it occurs. So what it did is it really created a standards map for the course, accomplishing the same thing that I talked about earlier. Now, we didn't deploy this to the students. We didn't put that in the course itself, but the teachers can see it and we can see it so that you can look back again and see where the gaps are. What standards did they not accomplish as they were going through the course? That's super exciting, right, to us. Again, it's just in its infancy. We just did it in the fall, and there are a lot of tweaks that we want to do to it. And when I get to the last slide, that's when we'll have the conversations about all the things that we want to do. So this is what we have done so far. We've had the two pathways. And what we found from the student surveys that we did, as well as the teacher surveys as well, is that it's useful. Okay, and I say that kind of low key, right? It wasn't a blow my mind, hey, I love pathways, give us more pathways, give us more badges. The students that responded, which was a low number, said it was useful to have a visual, demarking where they are in the course, and they used it for that fashion. A couple of them had, queries about what are these badges, where can I use them, right? What is the currency behind it, which is an excellent question. But in general, it was just kind of a, medium happiness about it. And that's an example of the pathway there. That's the course progression one. And that's the map for the standards. All right, so that's kind of where we're at right now. We've deployed it in, I believe it's 4 or 5 of our sections of biology at the Georgia Virtual School. As part of this grant, we are also working on a program called Partner Up, in which basically it's a franchise model for districts. They get our LMS, they get our technical expertise in online learning, our professional development. They use their teachers to teach our courses. So some of our partners are also getting this course. At least 2 of them, it might be 3 of them now, have the biology courses with the badges. One of the things that we did realize right off the bat in the fall was we didn't have enough time to do this, right? This grant came around and we did what we could before we had to deploy it in the fall. And then so for the spring, is we built a module for the course. We also talked to the teachers before the beginning of the semester and said, this is what it is, this is how you can use it. When you meet with the students for the first time, please give them a primer on what this will do for them. They can track their progress, maybe create some interest and some motivation built around that. So I think that our responses from this semester will be similar, but maybe in higher numbers, right? More kids will have experienced the earning the badge and seeing what it does on their pathway. Well, this is early days for us, because this is one course out of 130 that we have, and so where do we want to end up? And hopefully this will cause some of the discussion that we might have as well. Well, one of the things that we've talked about, and we've talked about this for as long as we've been working in Pathways, we've wanted to create a co-curricular competency framework, 21st century skills, a value add for our courses that students could accomplish as they're in an English class, in a biology class, whatever it is. And that's something that we're actively working on now. That's what's wonderful about this conference, because so many people have built these frameworks or have talked about the frameworks, and we've talked about it, but now we're going to really work on deploying it. I've appreciated some of the conversations I've had, even just today. It's helping us think about, it's interesting because there are so many different frameworks, but they all overlap. Like maybe 95% overlap. Like we all agree critical thinking is one of those things that if we can give it to a student, we want to do it. Anyway, that's one of the things that we'll be working on with digital credentials for our students. Super exciting for us is the matriculation of the badges that the students can earn at Georgia Virtual School or any of our partner schools might end up on Pathways for higher education. Not in theory, but like for real. Like we are in discussions, in conversations with the technical colleges in the state of Georgia, and they have a grant from the Department of Labor and working on competency frameworks based upon industry standards in manufacturing, IT, and in healthcare. So I don't know what it's going to look like yet, but we'll be partners with them, and our students, our K-12 students, will be able to earn, whether it's 21st century skills that end up on their pathways, or even particular skills that are associated with those in our CTAE classes, that are associated with their pathways. But the idea is that it's a seamless transition, that's where those badges will have real currency. And that's exciting, because anytime that you can add the currency to the badge, you're liable to end up with a much more successful program. Again, for me, going back to the teachers, the master teacher program pays them more. So for them to go on that pathway and earn those badges means, something in their pocket. For these students, it will mean they will be able to see the opportunities, the career opportunities that are available to them by maybe completing a critical thinking module. They'll then see themselves on those pathways. So that's really exciting. We are also doing a deeper dive into personalized learning. As I said, this grant is relatively new. We didn't have a whole lot of time to do what we wanted to do in the biology course. We're also adding 5 more courses to this list. We originally and still are thinking about mostly kind of the core of 9th grade courses, although some other things have come in there, and we're going to add some courses that may not be just for 9th graders. But we are going to apply this same kind of methodology, at least the digital credentials, the choice. But in our biology course, we're going to take it so many steps further, right? Because, just the student choice between an assessment is not really personalized learning. That's a good step in that direction, but we're kind of, as I said, doing a deep dive and trying to see everything that our LMS can do, everything that the digital credentials can do to really elevate that notion of personalized learning, like building in some co-planning with the students so that they are directing themselves through the course, doing some mapping, literally world maps, so that they can decide where in the world they want to go to study different things about biology. Again, giving them the driver's wheel, if you will. So that's really exciting as well. And so I think that what our pathways look like at the end of this development, again, will be very different. And probably even more important to guiding them through the course. Because right now they are all progressing through the course exactly the same, right? They're getting the choices, but they're still going through in the same pattern. They really may go through in different patterns at the end of this development. That's very exciting. Okay, you can see I'm excited about lots of things. This is a short list. I literally have another list in my notebook of other things that I'm excited about. But I'll stop at the end of this list and see if there are any questions, right? So another thing that's happening is that Badger is expanding their capabilities within Canvas. I am hoping, is anybody from Badger? Okay, you're using Badger. Okay, because I was going to put you on the spot. Tell us everything you're doing. I've had a chance to see a little bit of it, and in general, right now, our badging occurs at the module level. Whatever is necessary to complete the module will then kick off a badge. It's that simple in Canvas. What we think is coming, and what I'm pretty sure is coming, is at least like you'll be able to badge an assignment, a discussion, right? The other ways that students interact with LMS will be able to be badged. I would love to be able to badge off a rubric and have different levels of badging that could be associated with different levels of competency. That would be really, really fantastic. And I think next level thinking. I have no idea if that's in there, but whatever is going to be in there, we're going to utilize to its best advantage. And again, very, very excited about that. We're also in discussions of really exploring a learner record store, right? And this is not just the digital credentials, but trying to see all the data. Like if we can take that fire hose of data that's coming out of our LMS and all the other places where there's student information, and then figuring out the 3 things that matter, right? Or the 10 things that matter. That's really exciting that we're actually going to start building that and seeing what comes out of it. I've seen other presentations where folks have done something similar, and it is really interesting because it is just an overwhelming amount of data, and then it does end up being a small number of things that make sense, And 90% of those things you could have just said from common sense. The kids engaged in the course, they do better in the course. Yes, of course, that's true. But there's always like that one or two things that you go, oh, that will be a change in practice. I remember, this goes back almost a decade, we did a study of the correlation between the tools in our LMS and student success. Discussions end up being the highest correlations. Discussions were worth 5%. So there's no way that it's the grade in those places where the student was either failing or passing, depending on what, they could ignore discussions and pass the class easily. Right, so we're like, how is that possible? Well, if the student is that engaged where they're digging into the discussions, which is almost ancillary to the rest of the course, then they're engaged everywhere else. Right. But anyway, that's what I'm talking about, those kind of epiphanies that are liable to come out of that. That is also very exciting. You've heard comprehensive learner record if you've been at this conference, right? So what does that mean? What does that look like? How does that interact? Who's going to take them out of your hands or out of the learner's hands and then do something with it? We are certainly interested in working on that. And in particular, both for us at the Georgia Virtual School, a lot of our students come from one class their entire high school career, right? It's a supplementary program with the Department of Education, so they might just come for AP Physics. So it doesn't really benefit them that much to have a comprehensive learner record based upon one course. Now, the co-curricular competencies and all that, that you can see that starts building that. But we think of it as a way of possibly encouraging students, again, maybe to come for more of their 9th grade classes, or to matriculate. You've done the biology course. Well, have a look at our AP biology course and look what you've already done, right? You've already earned, maybe not credit, but we're recognizing your knowledge. Maybe it's the basic knowledge that we'll expand upon. Or maybe you understand the scientific method enough that we say, just skip that module, go on to other content. So again, those are some of our ideas about going forward. I will stop here and see if there are any questions or even any comments. Our K-12 person, have you done any badging? No. Some literacy standards, yeah?
Rich, can you repeat that because the virtual people wouldn't have been able to hear the question?
Okay, I interrupted her, so I'll let her finish and I'll repeat it. Okay, excellent. She said that they're considering maybe doing some badging around the literacy standards. And I like what you said about protecting the teachers from thinking they have to do a lot extra to do this. I think that's one of those things that's on my list as well. A big topic that we're working on right now is elementary. Are you talking about literacy at the elementary level? K-12. Wow, we maybe should talk. Say again? Going to stagger it through K-12. Okay, yeah. So as a part of our grant, that's another thing that we're working on. We're a 6-12 institution, and now we're becoming maybe a K-12, not a course provider, but certainly K-5 resources for teachers. And I really want to do the badging at that level too. I mean, you start thinking about lifelong learning. If you get a badge in kindergarten that ends up, meaning something to you in high school, it's kind of mind-blowing to me. I don't know that if you can even do that. There's also, I think, privacy issues around it and all that. Have you tried at all? Yeah. I understand. The answer was no. Yeah, for the online group. Yep.
We do have some questions from the virtual audience.
Okay.
This is a two-parter. Is Canvas the main source of content to talk with Badger? And do you run into issues with badges not being fulfilled? We use Badger, but have to use another system of record to talk to Canvas, to talk from Canvas to Badger.
Wow. Well, she works for Badger, so no, she doesn't. She just uses Badger. We for the K-12 content, it all comes directly from our Canvas LMS, right, through an API directly to Badger. I would like for them to follow up about what they're using as a middle person or middle technology to make that happen. We don't have to do that. Now, we don't just badge K-12, we also badge our teachers, and we use all, we do manual badges, we also use other platforms to badge as well. So we don't just use Canvas for our badging in that space. In the K-12 space, it's only Canvas. Does that make sense? And was that both questions?
We'll give them some time to respond to that because the virtual audience is a little delayed.
Yeah,
But there
of
is
course.
another question in the meantime.
Okay.
How are badges translated to credit for you?
They're not. They're really kind of a source of information right now. Because I was thinking about that as well. So a student can earn the overall course badge, but it really doesn't have anywhere to go right now. It's one course sitting in isolation. If they earn the badge, they have also earned credit in the course, but they're not tied. So I think probably there's probably a deeper level to the question, but right now for us, it's not associated with credit whatsoever.
I work for an academic health science center, and we have an online STEM program for grades 6 to 12, and we are looking to implement badging. What is your biggest lesson learned in the development of your program?
Yeah, it goes back to the co-curricular competency and what I said about being at this conference where, people have done incredible hard work too to come up with frameworks. And there's a lot of, that they have their framework and these people have their framework. That is the hardest work, but it's the best place to start. Because if you have the framework, then everything bounces off of that. That's what I would say is say, okay, for K-12, what are the competencies that you've identified? Having all that laid out and mapped out before you start badging, it will reveal to you what you should badge, I think. Okay. Any questions from the audience? Yeah. Yeah, good question. So the visibility for the pathways, would you please repeat that?
Yes, Rich, I can repeat it. I'm just wondering around the visibility of the badges and I guess the pathways. Does that sit within Canvas? And also, is that for just learners and teachers, or are you employing the Canvas permissions to have parents be able to view the badges as well, or are you planning to? Just curious.
Yeah, I'll answer the first one first and try to ignore the last one. I'm not going to ignore it, of course. Yes, right now it is integrated, right? So the pathways is its own API in the Canvas. So you have to attach both into a Canvas course, which is a bit of a pain. And I've been told that it will be a single API for both pathways and Badger going forward. That's just nice from the administrative perspective. That will be a pleasant combination of that fact. And so we'll see. But yes, it's available and visual to the learner within the learning management system without them leaving the learning management system, which is really important to us. The second question about the parents looking at it, we have talked about it, but it's not available now. And I don't know. I really don't know, because it kind of goes to a policy question beyond us just wanting to do what we want to do. That will be a policy question for our instruction and admin team to decide. I like the fact that they could do it, but it's a little bit, Not misleading. I think if you went and looked at it, it's visually right in front of you whether the student has been successful in different parts. But literally, the student could have an A in the class and have gaps, right? I mean, you can get an A but not master every single standard. And so, if a parent, particularly the high-pressure parents like we often have at Georgia Virtual School, because a lot of our kids are accelerating, trying to accelerate. If there's a gap, I can imagine that same scenario I told you about with teachers that see a gap, that want that filled, wanting that filled. And that's really not the purpose. You see what I mean? It might motivate a parent to go, why didn't you get this mitosis badge? I don't know. Yeah. It's a good question, though. But particularly the question about whether it's visible within the learning management system. I don't think it works. I don't think we would have deployed it if it weren't. Yeah, it has to be right there in front of them. Yeah. Follow up? I'll repeat it. Yeah.
Are you drawing from the standard grade book, or are you drawing from the mastery grade book within Canvas LMS?
Great question. Definitely standard grade book. It really is hitched a ride onto our concept of everything we've done up until now. It didn't get that full revolutionary approach to it. I don't know if that will happen with this next iteration as well, but we are utilizing what we're doing with the digital credentials and the personalized learning to really look at our content and make those kinds of decisions, like can we move more towards competencies. It's very difficult for us because, as I said, we're not a standalone program. We're entirely supplementary, and we're partners with districts. And are districts ready to go to competency-based learning? Yeah, some of them, I think, would be really excited about it. But I think the vast majority would say, give us something that looks like what we already do. And so that makes it difficult for us to go, hey, we're the vanguard of this. We have to serve the districts where they need us and where they want us. But that's a good question. And we do, I mean, that's the exciting part is that's the next step. We really get to play with all the things that happen in there to see what we can do next. Because in online learning, as in I think all learning now, you have to stay on your toes. You have to keep working at this. This is not something you can turn around in 5 years and look back at your content and go, oh, okay, it's going to look like it's 5 years old. Whereas you go to a classroom teacher, it could look like the same classroom from 20 years ago. Hopefully not, but we know that it can. Yeah. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate you showing up, and I've appreciated having a podium. Enjoy the conference. Thank you.